Okay, welcome to the retail customer analytics demo. This is a product recommendation tool, and the use case is personalized marketing. The example is retail, but it's very appropriate to use the same techniques for any industry where you're selling products or services to customers. The data science techniques that you will see are a combination of RFM analysis and customer lifetime value for customer segmentation, combined with market basket analysis to make a product recommendation. And with those product recommendations, you can either increase customer sales or reduce customer churn. And the data set is a big data set. It's customer sales data from an online retailer that sells a variety of household products. And it's using TIBCO Spotfire integrated with TIBCO Data Science, where TIBCO Spotfire is the visual cockpit and TIBCO Data Science is the engine that pushes out the data science models into Spark and allows you to compute in database without having to move the data. So I will go through this tool step by step. It's split up in different parts, and we'll start with part one. So part one is the most important part, I would say, in any data science project or any analytical tool that you build, and it is access to the data. So what you're looking at here is actually the output of having done all the data prep and data cleaning steps. Because this is customer data and that almost always is big data, we need another tool, as I mentioned, TIBCO Data Science, to do the data prep and data cleaning steps. But let me just quickly explain to you what the end product is. This is the row level customer data by category and subcategory. You've got invoice dates, the quantity bought, and the total price. And as always with Spotfire, you can very easily sort of navigate through the data. If you select a category on the right-hand side, the table on the left updates. There's also a product hierarchy available, so you can go to a smaller detail if you like. You can always make the visualizations bigger as well if you want to see more detail. You can build this, how you want, but this is basically to quickly see if you have missed anything or if there's any gaps, you can quickly find out. But let's take a look at how we prepare the data in TIBCO Data Science. And if you had new data, if you were just entering this tool after a while and you hadn't used it, you would click on Prepare Data to make sure that you're looking at the most recent data. So this is TIBCO Data Science. It is a very collaborative tool. This is a web UI. You can collaborate with that very easily. Every project will have its own workspace with different tabs. In this case, we're looking at the work files, which are workflows that segment all the data science steps into sections that make sense. In this case, we have 3 different steps for data preparation and 3 different steps for customer analytics. Each of those steps involves, sort of a separate piece of work that you then connect later, but you can work on it in a very organized way this way. So for data preparation, we actually are combining 2 data sets. So we're doing data cleaning steps in each of the data sets, and then in step 3 here, I'll just show you that as an example, we're combining the data sets. And if I open the flow, I can also show you that this is a tool that's very easy to use. As you can see, it's a visual workflow tool. So users can just drag and drop operators onto the canvas. If you click on the operators, because it's red, because you have to define some of the parameters, you can do that. It will highlight the ones that you need to populate. And then you can add it to your workflow and connect when you filled out those details. This is a tool that is mostly used by data engineers for the data prep steps, data scientists for the analytics steps, but it can certainly be used by business users as well to review if any steps were missed or just to understand how this application is built. So this is the tool that is used for all of the data science steps that are done in database. So going back to Spotfire, now that we know how this data set was built and is ready to use for exploration and analytics, let's go to the exploration step, because this is also a really critical step in the data science lifecycle, because you have to understand before you do any more advanced analytics, what's in your data. And this is typically a step where you would involve the full team to get an understanding of what's there. And in this case, we started with a listing of top selling categories, bottom selling categories. We're looking at sales over time. We can make selections to look at different years. We can filter the data out. We can filter and look at a certain time period within the years and compare those if we wanted to. We can look at different categories rather than selecting all. We can select at a group of categories. And as you can see, it's very interactive. All of the graphs populate straight away. Now, this visual here on the right is a spider plot, and this is a Spotfire mod. And Spotfire mods are an extension to Spotfire, and it's a cloud-enabled developer framework that allows you to build custom visualizations. And in this case, this spider graph is able to visualize in a two-dimensional way multivariate data. So that's really interesting. There are lots of other options. We'll show you some more in this tool as well. Now, the dashboards can be built with different measures. I know in sales, it's always really important to be able to look at both value as well as volume sales, depending on the products that you buy. So those type of drop-down menus you can build depending on the business and depending on the type of questions that your business users ask. And you can obviously develop this and adapt this over time. So hopefully you see that it's quite a powerful tool. It's built by data engineers and data scientists, but can be developed over time as it is being used by the business user. So now we're ready for the analytics. So we're interested in recommending new products for our customers. So we're going to do a market basket analysis. And you may recognize the button. So if I had new data, if I wanted to update this analysis, I would just click the update market basket analysis and it would run in TIBCO Data Science and return the results here. That takes about 60 seconds. So I'm not going to press that button now because it's big data, but that's what happens. The results are ready for us to analyze already. And there are different settings that the business users can make to run the analysis as well. So market basket analysis is used to identify a combination of products that are frequently bought together. So you look at all of the purchases in your data set, and you generate measures that give you an idea of the strength of these, relationships between the different products. So the measures are lift, support, and confidence. They can be visualized in different ways. In this case, we have a table where the highest lift is at the top. As you can maybe expect, measures with a high lift are interesting to recommend. So when there's a lift that is higher than 1, it means that it's a good product to recommend. If people are buying one product, you can recommend the next product. Support is a measure of presence of these combined purchases within the data set, and confidence is a measure of accuracy. We can look at this in scatter plots. The sliders at the scatter plot give you quite a nice way of sort of exploring the data again and see what is available to you. But we actually really prefer the network analysis, and as you may have guessed already, this is again a Spotfire mod, and it's very useful because it actually displays all the relationships between all the data points in the data set. And it's a really nice way of exploring where the strong relationships are, because you can use all the Spotfire tools to identify those strong relationships. In this case, we've given the strongest relationship the darkest color and the largest width. So in this case, you see that arts and crafts and games and toys are strongly related. So this already gives you an initial idea of the recommendations that you may want to make, but obviously, you can't sort of pull this out and do something with it. And also, we don't want to give a recommendation to all customers. We want to give the recommendations to specific segments of customers. So the next step that we're going to do is segmentation. And we've chosen to do RFM segmentation. And this is really about understanding your customer purchase behavior. RFM categorizes all these customers according to the 3 measures: recency, frequency, and monetary. That's where RFM comes from. And depending on how you rank in each of those 3 measures, you get assigned to a certain segment. And we've also used this color scheme to help you sort of see what are the sort of the positive customers or the strong customers, and maybe the slightly more problematic customers. And in between, we colored them blue. So to illustrate how this works, the champions have a very low recency. So they were purchasing in your store or your online store very recently. The frequency is high, so they have bought frequently in your store and they've spent a lot. So that's why they get the highest segment champions. On the other hand, if you, for example, look at risk customers, they haven't bought very recently. So they have been not buying for quite a while. Their frequency is lower, but probably was higher when they were still buying. And they actually purchase quite a lot. So these are at risk and are an important customer to maybe pay attention to, because you want to get them back at spending more frequently. Now we're doing one more segmentation technique that we want to add to this, and that is customer lifetime value. You're probably familiar with that term. Customer lifetime value is a technique to predict how much your customers are going to spend in the future based on their historic purchase behavior. So for each of those segments, for all our customers, we have predicted their customer or their spends for the next 6 months, which results in their customer lifetime value. And so you can see for all customers, but also for each of the segments, the distribution of how much money we think they're going to spend over time. And this is also displayed in a box plot. If you like that visualization, box plot looks at the distribution of all the values within your different segments in this case. So in order to create recommendations, we need to select the segment that we want to build recommendations for. So in this case, I'm going to look at risk customers. Those were the ones that we want to get back in our store and re-engage. And I'm going to look at the high value customers. I can see in the box plot that they're selected here as well. And then I click on the button Generate Recommendations. And that brings me to the final part of our recommender tool, because these are the actual recommendations. As you can see, we have continued with those selected customers, 134 in total. These 2 bubble graphs show you the distribution of how they sell different how they purchase in all the different categories, with the bubble size, the number of customers. So in this case, 124 of all 134 customers buy a product in the kitchen segment. And the lighter color and the left side of the graph represents a lower value that they spent. So this is actually important because you can consider the value that customers spend in building your recommender. So we've actually added a sophistication to this tool. Initially, when you run the recommendations, you will get market basket analysis only, but you can change it to total value adjusted. That means that the categories where customers in the segments spend more money are weighted a little bit heavier, so might be recommended sooner. And we've actually created 3 different recommenders in this case. And depending on your marketing strategy or your sales strategy, you may choose something different, and you can obviously expand this as well. But the first one is using the weighted lift score in this case. So if there's a customer that buys arts and crafts in your segment, you would recommend games and toys. And then there's 2 more recommendations here as well. The color just indicates the strength of the recommendation. So you would typically start with the highest number here. And this uses the lift score. We also have a recommender that uses support. That was the sort of the frequency or the popularity of the item in the segment. So this is all related to the specific segment. In this case, 2 product categories are rating the same. So you could recommend home accessories or kitchen to the segment as well as a likely segment that customers will buy. And last but not least, try something different. That is actually, those are products that have a lift score that is higher than 1.0. So it's a positive relationship between the products, but it is something different. So you might want to do, if your customers are not buying a lot of different categories, you might want to introduce them to a different category. Or if they're new customers to your store, you might introduce them to some new categories by using this recommendation technique. The last Two things I wanted to point out is that recommendations can be made personal. So in this case, we've looked at a segment and we can go quite specific in the segment, but these recommendations can of course be turned into personalized recommendations, which is appropriate if you have a high value item, if you're selling fashion or if you're selling travel or cars or something like that, you would probably want to go with a completely personalized recommendation. Finally, this can all be automated. So the data that you produce in this recommender can be written to a database where that has where your decision tool has access. So if you want to create automated emails or a promotion on your website, when your customers browse your website, or if they come into your store and they scan their loyalty card, you want to bring up these recommendations, that can all be automated. So that brings me to the end of this demo. I hope you enjoyed it and that you see a useful application to your business.